November 6th, Tuesday.
No, November 6th, a blue wave came in.
It did.
It started with the pink wave, and then came the blue wave. And ultimately, I want to start the black wave, okay? But that's at another time and another day.
Black wave already hit.
The black wave, but guess what? I want us to start, you know how they put the energy? I saw a wave, how wave go.
Yeah.
It lifts. So when we going to start lifting black folks up again, okay? But that's another subject for another day. So this is the deal. 1.4 million blacks voted. 1.4 million blacks are reside in the state of Michigan. Out of 1.4 million, 500,000 voted in this year's election.
That's a nice number.
That's a nice number. But let's delve off into the numbers.
Okay.
In Detroit, 190,000 voted. 12,000 voted Republican. Statewide, 33% voted, black folks voted for Bill Schuette. 42% voted for John James, and 42% voted for Tom Leonard. Now, before that, 2 weeks before the election, we did a statewide poll only for African Americans. 33% of the people we polled did not know who Gretchen Whitmer was.
Who's gubernatorial candidate.
16%.
They didn't know who she
was. She didn't know who she was. 16% was undecided up until 2 weeks before the election. And now this is the one going to get you. 18% of the African Americans polled statewide had a favorable view of Donald Trump.
What? No, that got me.
Okay.
18%. Say that again.
18% had a favorable view
of African Americans.
Of African Americans that was polled.
And Michigan had a favorable view of Donald Trump.
Yes. So this is it. So this is the deal. So I asked the pollster.
Poll again. Poll on the day.
I said no. I said
after GM.
Okay. Right. I asked him. I want you to surmise what happened. Why do you think African Americans voted in that direction? And he said this. When we move, we take on the characteristics of our communities that we move in.
Sure. Okay,
so on Facebook, I got vilified yesterday. I said black folks haven't left the black community. But this is the bottom. You can move where you want to move. You can live where you want to live. But the bottom line is you cannot lose your soul.
Or your true identity.
Your true identity. You can move where you want to move, but you don't have to lose your soul.
Sure.
So let's talk about that.
So that goes to what I said before the break. See, we've been taught to see reality through the eyes of Europeans.
Yes.
So when people move into these other communities, or when they go to these predominantly white institutions, things like that, they take on to a greater extent the value system of the people who are around them.
Right, and they take on the characteristics.
You conform to your environment.
Yeah.
Well, but the reason, but what happens is that it happens to, we're more likely to do it because we've been stripped of our history and culture.
And don't know.
See, other ethnic groups,
naturally,
other ethnic groups are less likely to do it. Even though you have some Hispanics who voted for Trump, they're regretting it now. You have some Chaldeans,
yes,
and their relatives got deported.
Right.
All right, here in Detroit.
Right.
Okay, but with us, it's an anomaly. It's different because your history and culture gives you your foundation, your values, your interests, and your principles. So when you've been stripped of that, right, and then you think you have achieved a level of success by being able to move out into their neighborhood, you take on those characteristics, those beliefs, those behaviors.
But what's interesting, Michael, what's interesting, Steve, and Laura, and Tamak, the bottom line is, when I grew up, the neighborhoods were white.
Which neighborhood?
And you had a ride. It was moving on up at that point.
Hold on. My daddy moved from 4th Street to Homer Street. And when we moved there, the conclave was white.
Now, what year was this?
This was in the early 60s. I was born in 1956.
Okay, so it was changing.
It was changing.
Because white flight had already started in the early 60s.
Because of Southfield. Because they was building Sarpolus at the time.
Right.
If you look at the mass exodus of white folks, was in the 50s.
Right.
When they came in and we did a black bomb, they destroyed black bomb. But see, this is the deal. But we still, back in the day, had soul food.
Right.
Even when the white folks lived around us.
We were very clear about our identity.
We have lost our identity. Okay, so guess what? We've been our identity has been co-opted, and they have made money off our identity, and we taking on the oppressor's identity.
So, but Keith, I truly believe that's only for 1.5 generations, because
because that's what you thank you, Lord. You got to look at that. You just said the 60s. That's in this lifetime in this room. Where the oppressed has been for 400, 500, 600, thousands of years.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So now that we are becoming culturally aware,
yes,
and a lot of folks, I totally agree. Once they move, sometimes they do take on that persona. The next step is going to be the next generation that they raise, because that's the next voter. Because what you are describing, I'm sure, is not your age group that voted that way. It's my age group because we were raised in Southfield. We were raised in Bloomfield.
Yes,
we were raised.
Right.
So we think that
that's
this
our
is
reality.
Right.
That is our reality.
Yes. Right. Go ahead.
Yeah.
So this goes back to us being able to reclaim our history and culture and having to do that.
Yeah.
And then because your history and culture gives you the cultural paradigm that you see reality through. So we've been taught that because something is good for Europeans, it's necessarily good for us. That's not necessarily the case. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Okay, and your history and culture influences your economic empowerment, political empowerment. So to understand what you should vote for, you have to understand your history and understand your conditions and understand how policies impact you, because politics impacts every aspect of our life.
Yes.
You know, politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. Okay, so when you look at in Florida, you look at Georgia, for instance, with Stacey Abrams. Okay, you had 3 million people registered to vote in Georgia who didn't vote.
Right.
And she was 18,000 votes short of a runoff election.
But think about this. They've been conditioned.
Yes.
Okay, let me just share this with you. Call in at 313-837-1340. I'm going to give you a case in point. Some years ago when I was dating Miss Garrett, we went to Georgia. My wife, okay? Right. So we went to a restaurant. I didn't know it was called the Black Sambo restaurant, okay? So I go, and that was a McDonald's. So I go in there and to sit down, and my wife noticed this white kid was interjecting with his mother. He was very vociferous on what he wanted to eat.
Yeah.
So when I got to the table, Kathy showed me it was a chocolate chip pancake with white lips, cherry eyes, and the whole shot. It was a Black Sambo pancake, okay? So I told the brother, this is the point that gets to your point. The brother, I said, what's this? What's up with this, man? He says, a happy face. Automatically, because he lives in that environment, he has been conditioned to be a part of that environment and don't question that environment.
Yeah, Megyn Kelly told him.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So then we went to another restaurant later on that day. 2 old black men sitting out front of the restaurant. Mr. Gilmore comes walking down the street. They said, here come Mr. Gilmore. He's a good man. And so then he goes in, and Mr. Gilmore started admonishing his black sister. I said, man, you don't talk to your sister like that in front of me.
Oh, they can tell you was from up north.
Hey, I said, you don't do that around me.
But you know what?
How long did you stay?
But see, what I'm saying gets back to conditions.
Yes.
We have been subjugated to conditions that we have forgot where we came from, and we continue to do the same old thing.
But Steve told you it was your family's programming. It was what was ever relevant in your own household constitutes what becomes your tradition and your culture, both socially, religiously, and otherwise. The way you interject, the way you feel, whether or not there's black pride. My daddy Stride said to me that he had pride. Just the way my black man walked. When I saw Obama, I could recognize his confidence in his stride.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? We.
So why we run away from that, Laura?
Because we had to conform.
Hi, Laura.
We had to fit in.
Hi, Laura. My name is Keith Williams. I work for General Motors Corporation.
We were labeled as being militant or nonconformist if we tried to look like or even implement even a small bit of it, which we called our own personal identity. We knew that our identity could be measured in small increments, in safe places, but we could be ourselves at home. But when you're sitting in the boardroom or you're the management person over 400 people and you're a minority as it is, you don't slide in there talking about what's up, dude. You don't do the fist bump, because those are cultural pieces, right? I noticed I was in Chicago. black men walking past black men, they don't open their mouths and say anything. They got this little
They
head
got the
nod
nod.
thing. That's a black man thing. You know, we recognize these little tenets in our culture that speak to what is our capacity.
But think about this, Michael. Look at the potential in the nod, in the culture. That is a multi-billion-dollar market that they have co-opted.
Right.
They have watched us, and they have manufactured clothes based on our style,
and we accept
the way we look, and we accept that.
Right. So what happens is what you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself.
Right.
What you think about yourself is
That's
based
true.
upon what you've been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So what we have to do is, this is why media is so important. We have to fight back against the negative stereotypical images that are depicted of us, especially in negative controlled corporate hip hop as well, which these images are exported around the world. We have to continue to put out positive images of ourselves. This is why media sources like AtlantaBlackStar.com, The Griot, YourBlackWorld.net, FaceToFaceAfrica.com. The Root is all right, man. They had some skeptical writers for The Root, but this is why this stuff is so. This is why this type of information is so important. Roland Martin's daily digital show, Monday through Friday, Roland Martin Unfiltered. This is why this type of information is so important, because it counters the nonsense that's been out there, and it gives us a better understanding of our history, so that we can alter our actions and behaviors and alter our results. So this is what we have to continue to do, and we have to understand that we have to have a synthesis of the African history and culture, the economic empowerment, and the political self-defense, the political empowerment. They all work together. It's not one or the other.
Right.
That's right.
Right. And you can't separate them.
Yeah, but let me just say this, Steve. When I was growing up, I thought Malcolm X was the boogeyman.
Why'd you think that?
Because what you heard on TV, black and white TV back in the day,
Aggressive.
Right.
he was radical. He was different than the normal society, because at that time we saw Ozzie and Harriet, Father Knows Best, Leave It to Beaver. We saw that side of America, and when they go into a picture of Malcolm X, you saw an angry black man talking about the devil and all this other stuff. And so I started believing that stuff. Then when the Black Panthers came, I said, these guys are really radical. But guess what? If you look at the history, the Black Panthers had a distribution center was out of this world like Stephen in the Bible. They was feeding people. They was clothing people. They was educating people, man.
Right.
So it wasn't radical. But it's what we had to put on them to let you become fear of them.
Right.
So what they were doing is actually the right thing, what you're supposed to be doing. So in that kind, I know you about to jump in, but that piece is your show is just what Michael was just talking about, the importance of media and what you're doing, which is allowing a voice to bring truth to light, and then therefore you are the next catalyst who is going to help support what young people are listening to, what young people get exposed to, like in your program, what Tamuk is doing, what Laura does, what Michael is doing in his classroom. All of these things play a part, and it can't be done in isolation. No. None of these conversations can happen without saying political, without the educational, without the spiritual, without the finance. All of those things play a part in what it is received. What we're talking about, your data that you gave, you got folks who, they moved out, they think they belong, and it's always you think you belong until you get in front of a judge, a police officer, or a situation.
Or lose your job.
Or lose your job, or put you in a situation, which is your finances, put you in a situation to reality brings it all back home.
Man, Stevie, I'm reflecting back now. There used to be a song, Digging in the Sea with the Gangster League. Ooh, brothers be leaning down and a deuce and a quarter.
And look how many pimps that produce.
Yes.
Right. So we have to also understand that just because something was part of our culture does not mean it was positive.
I agree.
Hey, we understand that.
No, some people don't. Some people don't.
They live by it.
Some people.
No, Nicki Minaj is an image in our culture.
Cardi B,
right?
Nicki
and all that.
Minaj. These are caricatures that are controlled by European conglomerates.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, that project these negative images to us. But what we also have to understand is that we have to fight back, and people's history and culture teaches them how to deal with the problems of the past in the present and the future to meet the needs of the community. So we have to understand how we historically dealt with this. So when you talk about Malcolm X, you're talking about the Black Panther Party for self-defense. They were negatively depicted largely by the white-controlled media.
Yes.
Because they feared them. They
was
telling the truth.
infiltrating, right.
They were telling the truth. But the other thing is that people don't talk about is that when Malcolm officially separates from the Nation of Islam, March 8, 1964, Malcolm joins the Civil Rights Movement.
Yes.
And Malcolm helped radicalize the Civil Rights Movement. In the Battle of the Bullet, April 3rd, 1964,
right.
and April 4th. April 4th was Detroit. April 3rd was in Cleveland, Ohio. Right. He talks about joining the Civil Rights Movement and injecting black nationalism into the Civil Rights Movement. And this is what Malcolm did. Okay? And the other thing that Malcolm was talking about was a unification of the civil rights leaders and their followers.
Right.
Because he understood the power of collectiveness.
That's the
unity. What this is going to bring
right.
about. The economic piece, the whole piece of your spirituality, the whole piece of learning your culture, and now reflecting back to what is actually happening on the continent of Africa.
Right.
But see, Steve, now, when I was growing up, we wanted to see a black mayor. We got one. We wanted to see a black president. We got one because all the work that those folks did before me and you, they set the stage and the tone for what has happened.
Yeah.
So now when we got Barack Obama, that was the ultimate. But we got to keep on working, man. We got to grab.
It's a long way to go.
We got to get our culture back. Right. We got to get our soul back. Because when Jasmine Williams said that at Aretha, they said probably the wrong place.
Jasmine Williams.
Yeah, Jasmine Williams talked about soul. The soul, Steve, is like when my mother. See, people don't understand. When the people working in the cotton field sweating and all of a sudden they was listening to that old Negro music and stuff, it was a soul. It was something that drove us, man.
You couldn't touch it, but you could feel
They
it.
can't go through what we didn't go through. Like when I talked about.
That's what me and Tabuk talked about before the show started.
Yeah.
So you got to think about this, Keith. What has happened, and a lot of times we get disenfranchised, not even necessarily disenfranchised. We missed the boat because we didn't have to struggle as hard.
That's right.
And that goes back to once they moved to Bloomfield. And
then once they started saying, "Hi, Steve. I'm Keith Williams. I'm president of corporate America."
So it's two things here. They didn't have to struggle as hard, but the other thing is that subsequent generation, that previous generation, that civil rights generation, for the most part, they didn't teach the history to the subsequent generation.
They didn't transfer what they did.
They didn't transfer it.
We put it under the rug.
They put it under the rug. Other ethnic groups and races don't do that.
That's right. We had to ask permission. You know.
So this is why the history is so important. You got a little battery. This is why the history is so important. But the other thing you talk about Barack Obama, many of us are not politically astute. We don't understand the concept of protecting our gains.
Yes,
so many people say, "Oh, well, we didn't get anything under President Barack Obama." What systems analysis did you do to come to that conclusion? Because you obviously did not read Progress of the African American Community under the Obama administration, which is at WhiteHouse.gov, which is at WhiteHouse.gov, because it goes through and it shows you how policies from President Obama positively impacted the African American community, and these are being systematically reversed by Donald Trump.
But more importantly, it was not so much the policies, it was the blocking and tackling that Obama was doing for black folks, okay? He was stopping the craziness in political process. You can't win every battle, but guess what? He said no because they could have did more damage to us if he wasn't there.
No, but I'm speaking specifically of policies like
about the healthcare deal.
No, not just the healthcare deal. Criminal justice reform. With the criminal justice, when you deal with things like 2013, the Smart on Crime Initiative from Eric Holder. When you deal with the Department of Education policies like shutting down predatory colleges like ITT Tech. President Obama shut down predatory colleges who were disproportionately targeting African Americans and Hispanics, getting them to take out exorbitant student loans, not properly placing them in jobs that had anything to do with it, and then he put regulation in for predatory colleges. Now this is being reversed under Betsy DeVos, okay, who is trying to block the student loan forgiveness policies that President Obama put in place.
The best thing that happened right now is when we took back to Congress. Now we do all
that's part of the House of Representatives. That's the first part.
I'm about to say that's step one.
But see, the bottom line, people don't realize in the state of Michigan, we got the governor, we got the attorney general, but we don't have the appropriations angle.
We don't have the state legislature. State legislature. So now, just like yesterday in Mississippi,
they did a county somewhere in Mississippi where in the past they voted 31% for the Democratic candidates. In this case, I can't talk politics. I ain't telling you who to vote for on the show. I won't put that disclaimer out there. But guess what? SB got 45% of that vote in that community with college-educated Republicans. Okay, so
these are like suburbs.
Yeah, these suburbs.
Yeah.
Yes.
He did.
See, the bottom line is we put so much focus on the white working class. Okay, those are the folks are in that. So you got the Delta, then you got the rural America, so we've been putting too much emphasis on them instead of putting emphasis on the people who can form a coalition. This is my coalition now.
And this is what Reverend William Barber III was doing in North Carolina.
Okay.
This is how they got the governor elected in North Carolina. They had broad coalitions of different races of people, and they said, we're all affected. We're all sick. We all have a poor income, things like this, right? So, and this is what happened. And in Mississippi is one of the poorest states in the country.
Right.
And it's one of the reddest states also.
Yeah, and they keep going, they keep doing the same thing.
They're voting against their own interests. They're voting against their own interests. You have white people voting against their own interests, siding with white Republicans, keep putting Republicans in office because they operate based upon this concept of white, but don't understand that economic conditions are closer to African Americans.
Right.
And they will never allow that to happen in their mindset of being
because they still have a class mentality.
But
and the less educated they are, the more they have that class mentality.
So the bottom line is, I say, tell my brother, we're putting too much emphasis on them. We should be putting emphasis back on us. What do we do to change our culture or recapture that culture? To me, was bright. I used to love listening to the Temptations. I used to love listening to Marvin Gaye. I used to love listening to the Philadelphia Sound. I used to love listening to Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. I used to love seeing the brother Lean drive that 98 going with the convertible driving down Illinois. I remember the brothers on Friday get the job, come up from work, they go to get their dues process. And everything went good in that culture, but guess what? We weren't killing each other. And when the killing started is when they brought the heroin into our community.
Right.
And then subsequently they brought crack into our community.
We had balance.
Okay, we had balance back then. Yeah, they had corn liquor. Because they the bars were open on Sunday.
We had equity. We had our own understanding of the system. Because community was still in place.
Yes.
If you worship in a place and you get in your car and you drive away from that 7 days a week.
Right.
That is not community.
The police stayed in the community. The doctor stayed in the community.
That's right.
It was family. It was about family. And soul was intertwined in it. Yes.
So definitely the thing that we need to get back to, Keith, we talked about, I called in on Saturday when you talked about it, was like your campaign of hitting those barbershops starting next year. Don't wait until it's
We're going to start next year. We're going into the barbershop.
And helping them educate and get them thinking. And then you challenge them to come on and participate.
Let me say this very quickly so people are probably sitting at home or watching on Facebook. How do we change this? First of all, go to AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We have articles there you can read, video clips of mine dealing with history, politics, economic empowerment. Follow us on Facebook, the African History Network. And then this Saturday, we got Grits and Politics coming up.
Yeah, Grits and Politics.
Right?
I don't want to, this is an educational show.
You want me to announce it?
Yes.
Okay, so basically Grits and Politics is taking place this Saturday at Greater Emmanuel Church. And it's... The general body is 10 a.m. to 12 noon, and we're going to discuss the results from the election, midterm elections that took place in Michigan, and also where do we go from here as well. Okay, and I've got the address here.
19170 Schaefer.
Yeah, Great Emmanuel Church, and breakfast will be served also
at 10 o'clock. We just asking for donations. You know, I got enough for 60 breakfasts. We just asking for donations. And the bottom line is this. Yeah, so as we come to a close, there's a minute left of the show. So for the next month, like I said, we're gonna go back when we were striving to be better than what we are today. Right. And so and we're gonna have some songs, and I want you to call in. Let's get it. You know, I want to hear about James Brown said loud, I'm black. Can you play it? You can't play that, right? You can't play that, can you? But the bottom line is, Saturday after Grits and Politics, listen to the show at 3 to 4 o'clock, and we're going to continue the dialogue because somebody got to wake up in Detroit.
Amen.
Yeah, Saturday, December 1st. And we have a flyer at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com.
Okay.
Also.
God bless you, and have a wonderful Wednesday evening, and stay safe.